Imagine a world dominated by two colossal powers, the Byzantine Empire and the Sasanian Persian Empire. These two empires were not just neighbors, they were titans of their time, each with a rich history and a powerful military. For generations, these superpowers clashed, their borders stretching across the Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean. The lands they fought over were not just strategic, but also rich in resources and culture. Their conflict was a relentless struggle for supremacy, control of trade routes, and ideological dominance. The Silk Road, a vital artery of commerce, was often a focal point of their battles. The rivalry was ancient. Romans and Persians had been adversaries for centuries, locked in cycles of invasion and counter-invasion. Each side built formidable fortifications to defend their territories. Religious differences with Byzantine Christianity and Persian Zoroastrianism deepened the divide. These faiths were not just religions, but were integral to the identity and politics of each empire. In the early 7th century, the conflict reached new heights as Khosrow II of Persia launched devastating invasions. His campaigns were marked by both strategic brilliance and ruthless efficiency. Persian armies swept through Byzantine lands, conquering Syria, Palestine, and Egypt, Byzantium's richest provinces. These regions were not only economically vital, but also culturally significant. The loss was catastrophic, threatening the very survival of the Eastern Roman Empire. The once mighty Byzantine defences crumbled under the relentless Persian onslaught. Persian forces even besieged Constantinople, the heart of Byzantium. The city, known for its impregnable walls, faced one of its greatest threats. Jerusalem fell in 614 AD, and the True Cross was carried off to Persia, a humiliation that shook Christendom. This event was a profound blow to the morale of the Byzantine Empire. The stakes had never been higher. The fate of empires hung in the balance. Every battle, every skirmish could tip the scales of history. The world watched as two ancient civilizations fought for survival. The outcome of this epic struggle would determine the future of the region for centuries to come. The outcome would reshape history, leaving a legacy that echoes through the ages. The rivalry between Rome and Persia spanned nearly 7 centuries, a relentless contest that shaped the fate of the ancient world. This was one of history's longest and most bitter feuds, echoing across generations and dynasties. It all began with the Roman Republic's first clashes against the Parthians, setting a precedent for brutal Eastern wars that would define the region for centuries. When the Sassanid Empire rose in the 3rd century, it brought a new era of conflict, becoming an even more formidable and ambitious foe for Rome. Emperors like Shapur I struck devastating blows, humiliating Rome by capturing Emperor Valerian, a moment that sent shockwaves through the empire. These wars were about far more than territory. They were battles for prestige, resources, and the right to shape the destiny of the known world. Control of Mesopotamia, Armenia, and the lucrative Silk Road fueled constant conflict, as both empires sought to dominate trade and influence. The founding of Constantinople shifted Rome's focus eastward, making the Persian frontier a critical and ever-present concern for the empire's survival. Fortified cities like Dara and Nisibis became legendary battlegrounds, their walls bearing witness to countless sieges and heroic defenses. Treaties were made and broken with alarming frequency. Peace, when it came, was always fragile and temporary, never truly ending the hostilities. Both empires developed ever-evolving strategies and defenses, each side learning from the other and adapting to new threats in a deadly game of chess. By the early 600s, centuries of war had left both sides deeply scarred, exhausted, and mistrustful, setting the stage for dramatic changes yet to come. The final Byzantine-Sasanian War, beginning in 602 AD, brought devastation on an unprecedented scale. Provinces were ravaged, cities sacked, and populations decimated by famine and disease. Egypt's occupation crippled the Byzantine economy, while both empires drained their treasuries to fund endless campaigns. Taxes soared, and resources for culture or trade vanished into the war effort. Manpower was depleted, generations lost to the battlefield, agriculture and crafts left in crisis. Mercenaries filled the ranks, straining finances and loyalty. The social fabric of both empires frayed under relentless pressure. Despair and exhaustion set in, the will to fight waned. The fall of Jerusalem and the loss of the True Cross shattered Byzantine morale. Even Persian victories brought new challenges, controlling vast, resentful populations. Both empires staggered, their survival in doubt. By the late 620s, both empires were at the breaking point. Khosrow II's ambitions had overextended Persia, while Heraclius's Byzantium teetered on the edge of collapse. The cost of occupation and war was unsustainable. Both sides faced internal unrest and financial ruin. Heraclius risked everything on bold counter-offensives, while Khosrow's tyranny bred discontent at home. The pressure for peace mounted, but deep-seated hatred and mistrust made negotiation nearly impossible. Only a decisive shift in power, or total exhaustion, could end the conflict. The fate of two civilizations depended on what happened next. The world waited for a turning point. Facing disaster, Emperor Heraclius made a desperate gamble. In 622 AD, he left Constantinople's defense to its walls and led his army deep into Persian-held territory. Heraclius aimed to strike at the Persian heartlands, forcing Khosrow to defend his own empire. To fund the campaign, he melted church treasures, uniting church and state in a fight for survival. Heraclius retrained his army, led from the front, and inspired his men with bold leadership. His campaigns in Anatolia and the Caucasus were marked by surprise attacks and relentless determination. Key victories began to turn the tide, disrupting Persian control and morale. For the first time in years, the Persians were on the defensive. Heraclius's audacity revived Byzantine hopes and set the stage for a dramatic reversal. The war's momentum was shifting. In the late 620s, Heraclius forged alliances with the Khazars, opening a new front against Persia. He marched deep into Mesopotamia, aiming for the Persian capital, Ctesiphon. In 627 AD, the Battle of Nineveh became the war's turning point. Heraclius's victory shattered the Persian army and left Ctesiphon vulnerable. Khosrow II's authority collapsed. He was overthrown and killed in a coup led by his son, Kavad II. Persia, exhausted and leaderless, sued for peace. Heraclius, now in a commanding position, had saved Byzantium and humbled its ancient enemy. The war that had consumed both empires for decades was finally ending. The emperor's courage and strategy had changed the course of history. The path to peace was now open. Both empires, battered and weary, faced a new future. The world braced for what would come next. With Kavad II desperate for peace, negotiations began in 628 AD. Persia was in chaos, its military shattered and its leadership unstable. Heraclius, though victorious, knew Byzantium needed recovery, not further conquest. The main demands: Persian withdrawal from all occupied Byzantine lands and the return of the true cross. Kavad II, with little choice, agreed to these terms. The negotiations were swift, Persia capitulated, and the pre-war borders were restored. The treaty's groundwork was laid, ending nearly 3 decades of brutal conflict. Both empires hoped for stability, but the scars of war ran deep. The world watched as peace, at last, seemed possible. The peace agreement, formalized by 630 AD, restored the status quo ante bellum. Persia withdrew from Egypt, Syria, Palestine, and Mesopotamia. Byzantine control was re-established. The true cross was triumphantly returned to Jerusalem by Heraclius, symbolizing Christian victory. Prisoners were exchanged, and borders reset to those of 602 AD. The treaty was a monumental triumph for Byzantium, but Persia's internal chaos continued. Both empires were exhausted, their strength sapped by years of war. The peace was welcome, but its foundations were fragile. Few realized how quickly the world would change again. The 630 AD treaty was hailed as a remarkable Byzantine triumph. Territories painstakingly restored, sacred relics returned to Constantinople, and a sense of victory that had eluded the empire for decades. For many, it seemed as if a new era of stability and hope was dawning for Byzantium. Yet beneath the surface, both empires were mere shadows of their former glory. Years of relentless warfare had left their treasuries empty, their armies exhausted, and their people weary from endless conflict. The power vacuum left by their mutual exhaustion would soon be filled by forces neither side could have anticipated. Within just a few years, armies unified by the new faith of Islam erupted from Arabia, surging across the deserts and finding both Byzantium and Persia vulnerable and unprepared for this unprecedented challenge. The long and bitter wars between the two great empires had paved the way for these new conquests, leaving behind a landscape scarred by conflict and ripe for transformation. The Sassanid Empire, weakened beyond repair, collapsed under the Arab onslaught. Byzantium, though it survived, lost many of its hard-won provinces and would never fully recover its former strength. Heraclius' victory, once celebrated, became a tragic irony. He had saved the empire from Persian domination, only to see it threatened by a new, unstoppable force rising from the south. The Treaty of 630 AD stands as a powerful reminder that even the hardest-won peace can reshape the world in ways no one can predict, setting the stage for new conflicts and unforeseen transformations. It reminds us that the cost of war lingers long after the battle's end, and that history's turning points are rarely as final as they seem in the moment. Was this peace truly a new beginning for the region, or merely a brief pause before an even greater storm swept across the ancient world? The echoes of 630 AD still resonate through the centuries, reminding us of the unpredictable tides of history and the fragile nature of empires. The world was forever changed, its destiny rewritten by the choices and consequences of a single pivotal treaty.